Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted to be talking with someone on this episode who's worked across a variety of platforms, a variety of media, author Buzz Dixon. Buzz, thank you for jumping in. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining me and talking with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. There are numerous works that you've contributed to the world that have been part of my life, G.I. Joe being one of those, one of the first. You've also worked in the world of comics with
Mhm.
She-Hulk and many other titles. And Humanoids would be one of those as
Humanoids,
well
yeah.
in the world of animation.
Mhm.
So someone who has made an indelible mark on the
Mhm.
minds of many people.
Your parents would probably blame me, but that's okay.
Or send you a thank you note
Yeah.
or whatever that happens to
Mhm.
be. Yeah. So by means of a first introductory question, I'm curious about what that's like. I do a little bit of writing myself, and it must be interesting to work from one medium across to another. So what was that? What has that experience been like?
Well, it's been, as the Chinese would say, interesting. Uh, it has not been as much as I wish it had been a steady climb. It has been, a lot of peaks and valleys, with the peaks coming further and further apart.
Hmm.
But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed all the projects that I've worked on. Well, I'll take that back. I didn't enjoy the Little Clowns of Happy Town, but that was because I owed a favor to somebody.
Right, right.
But I've enjoyed most of the projects I've worked on, and I've always been able to find a creative challenge in everything I do, so that I'm what do you call it? I find something new to add to the mix every time, something that distinguishes that project from all the others.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you of course created the original G.I. Joe movie, not the one with Channing Tatum that came out in 2009, but the Duke meeting an Ultimate Fate G.I. Joe movie, and so that's definitely one of those
I
markers
I will
that's out there.
I have to be very careful to clarify here.
Hmm.
What had happened was that Ron Friedman, who's a great writer, he had done the original miniseries for GI Joe.
Hmm. Hmm.
He got GI Joe up on its feet, but once we actually got into production, we realized the version depicted in the miniseries wasn't going to work very well for a regular series. And so we had to start tweaking it and refining it, and eliminating a few things that he did, like jets swooping down and cutting tanks in half with their wingtips. We
Hmm.
had to eliminate cartoony stuff he had done, and one of my functions when I was brought on was to just make sure that the what do you call it, the um, uh, technical stuff was right, because
Hmm.
I had been in
Hmm.
the Army for 6 years. I
Oh
mean, he
yeah,
had he
yeah.
had in some of his miniseries, he had sergeants giving orders to majors and things like that, and no, that doesn't happen.
Right, right.
But he had first claim to doing anything new in GI Joe.
Hmm.
So, for example, Arise Serpentor Arise, I wrote a very, very detailed outline. I gave it to him. He followed it closely, and then I went back and edited it, to the
Hmm.
way that I thought would best serve the material. For GI Joe the movie, he was given first shot at writing the script, and I
Hmm.
honestly can't remember anything about the script at this point. Sorry, Ron. Uh, but I do remember the character we ended up calling Nemesis Enforcer, the flying guy, was in it. And that was about the only thing that everybody thought was a good idea. We want to keep that guy.
Hmm. Hmm.
They asked me to take a look at it and give them feedback. And I said, well, to be utterly frank with you, well, actually, they flew me out. They said, read the script on the plane, and then when you get here, give us some feedback. So I flew to New York, reading the script. And when I got there, I basically said, I'll be very honest, you'd be better off at this point just scrapping this and starting from scratch rather than trying to fix it.
Hmm.
And they said that was our feeling too. So do you want to write, the movie? And I said, I'll be happy to. So we had pitched when we pitched Serpentor, the origin for Serpentor. And this is some sound advice I pass along to all young writers.
Hmm.
They asked for a couple of ideas on how Serpentor came about. And if anybody asks you for a couple of ideas, don't give them to them. Just give them the one idea that you want,
Hmm.
because if you give them two ideas, they're absolutely going to pick the one you don't like.
Right.
And I suggested two. I suggested the one that was used in the miniseries, which is they create him out of the DNA of all these old conquerors. And then I also said there's a secret society somewhere that's been, backing Cobra all this time, and they're frustrated with Cobra Commander and they're sending a replacement. And Hasbro liked both of them, so we were stuck with both ideas.
Hmm.
So the miniseries used the DNA plot. The movie used the secret society plot. And it gave us a chance to do a lot of science fiction stuff that much deeper into the sci-fi than we had been before. I mean, G.I. Joe technically is a science fiction series, I guess,
Hmm. Hmm.
because of the weaponry and all the advances in technology we depict.
Yeah.
But this one really let us go into lost civilization territory. And this is another bit of advice I give to young writers. If you're going to use a placeholder name, either pick a placeholder name that you absolutely can live with if you have to, or pick something that is just so vile and disgusting nobody can use it. If I had known they were going to stick with Cobra Law as the placeholder name for this lost civilization, I would have called it Monkey Hemorrhoid Island or something like that. I would not have called it Cobra Law, because when they said they liked it, I said, it's a call out to Shangri-La, the most
Hmm.
famous lost civilization in literature. Um, let's not call it that. Let's call it something else. And they went with Cobra Law. So here
Yes.
we are.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Just thinking about what you were saying about going in, finding a script, there is that process in writing. And this also explains why sometimes on screenplays there are multiple names,
Oh
five,
God, yes.
six, yeah. And those are the ones that get their name on the screenplay.
Oh yeah. Well, the Writers Guild of America has a very detailed way of figuring that out. I don't take this as gospel truth, but I am under the impression you have to contribute at least 25% of the final script to get your
Mhm.
name on it. And there's there's the question of, well, how do you determine 25% of the script? I mean, if you go through and make dialogue changes, you may make dialogue changes that significantly alter the meaning and content of the story without altering the plot beats that much.
Mhm.
The Writers Guild is concerned about this because residual payments come through screen credit. If you write the original story, you get story by credit. And if you're the first writer on something, if you're not working off somebody else's story, if you're the first writer on it, you get the story credit, even if they throw your script out and bring somebody else in to completely rewrite you. The
Interesting.
the second version of what is it? Hunter Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
Well, I shouldn't say the second version, but the version that got filmed, they completely threw out the original script on it, and they still had to give that writer story by credit because he was the first one on the project.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's financially very important to writers to get that credit. I think without, unless you've got a special, circumstance like an anthology movie or something like that, I think you're limited to a total of five. No, I'll take that back. Six names on a screenplay. You can have two people writing the story, and then you can have two teams of two writers each
Mhm.
writing the screenplay. So you can get a total of six people writing. In reality, they farm this stuff out to what they call script doctors to punch it up, tighten it up. Script doctors are basically freelance editors who, just try to make something better. They don't try to take it over.
Hmm.
And most of the time, the script doctors, they just take a hefty fee, in cash up front, and they don't expect to get any residuals out of it, which is not necessarily a bad strategy. There's a lot of people who've made quite a nice living, not getting any screen credit, but doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
big fight that they were having over AI in writing,
Hmm.
it circulated around the fact that you can, with AI, create a workable basic story. That a
Hmm.
producer in an afternoon could come up with a workable basic idea and then hand that to a writer. And the writer would have to do the real work in making it work as a story. But because he's been handed 2 or 3 pages of material cranked out by AI, the producer gets to put his name on it as created by or story by and get all that income.
Hmm.
And if you hire somebody, if you use AI to write a script and it's derivative, but it at least follows an outline that you can understand, and then you hire somebody to punch it up, then you've got the Writers Guild, the best they can do is say, well, this person contributed over 25%, even though in reality they might be contributing 90% of the script, but all they can get is a split credit. So this has been one of the things that is very worrisome about AI in general, AI in creative fields, writing, music, art. AI lets you generate a lot of acceptable, mediocre material for virtually no cost.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, you see
Yeah.
AI generated images and you look at them and go, that's kind of interesting. And you look closer and you realize, well, it's they got problems with the legs, they got problems with the fingers, all this stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
AI cannot, for love or money, can't stay on model, as we would say in animation.
Yeah.
That's a problem they'll eventually lick. They'll eventually figure out how to tell AI do it exactly this way every time.
Hmm.
Um, so the challenge is that you've got, as I've said, a hack with a good work ethic can crank out a novel, a genre novel every week.
Hmm.
And we apparently have people already doing that. I know people who have cranked out uh, novel length manuscripts in about a week to 10 days. And they said, oh, I just had this burst of energy and it all came out. And I'm thinking, burst of energy, you know, and a little technological help there.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the modern challenge is being able to get your voice out there where it can be recognized, because traditionally you start by doing, I won't say hack work, but you start by doing the journeyman work. You start by writing cartoons, you start by
Hmm.
writing comic books, you take other people's characters and you put words in their mouth,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
eventually you get to the point where you've got enough ability and confidence in your ability that you can start saying and doing things your own way. Um, and then you just have to hope you make the breakthrough. And I don't mean like $1 million breakthrough, just the breakthrough in getting an audience's attention so that you have a regular readership or a regular audience that'll follow you along.
Hmm.
Um, there are people in music who have small core audiences who will follow everything they do.
Yeah.
And they may only end up playing local gigs, they may end up playing opening for larger acts and things like that. When CDs were still a viable thing, they'd sell a few thousand copies of their CD, enough to justify the effort but not anything to make money on. They
Hmm.
were real lucky. A movie or a TV show would say, oh, that's the perfect song for us, and they buy the rights for it. But now even AI is getting into that. We've got people doing imitation music of every kind. And the average person, music in the background is really all they're looking for. They're not
Mhm.
sitting there really learning anything from it, getting anything from it. They're just you know, absorbing it. And
Yeah.
there's a place for that. I mean, I'll turn on music at night, a jazz channel or something like that, and just let it play
Mhm.
because I don't want to listen. I want to work, but I need something in the background.
Mhm. Mhm.
80% of music listening is just mediocre, and it's just there to put sound in the air, pleasing sounds in the air.
Supermarket background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There is, and when folks bring up AI, I always come back to the idea that there's something nice to know that there's a human being that made this. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's kind of the connection point with story and with art is that you're listening to something, you're watching something, and you go like, "Oh, one of us made this,"
Mm-hmm.
one of our
Yeah,
species,
yeah,
and it's not some reconstituted sort of
yeah.
um, arrangement. So that's uh, I
I,
hope that it never replaces the human voice in that way.
I hope it doesn't replace human voices. I have no objection to AI as a toy. I mean,
Hmm.
I've
Hmm.
seen people do like music videos on AI. They'll take an old song and they'll write the lyrics in and have AI generate images for it. And that's amusing. You can sit there and go, oh, that's a nice video, and then somebody else does their version of it or their AI's version of it, and you go, oh, that's nice too.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
just pleasant mediocrity is what it is.
Right.
I've seen the people who've done like the faux trailers for Star Wars 1920 or something like that.
Hmm.
Okay, that's amusing, that's fun. As a game, as a toy, I don't have a problem with AI. The problem I have is that it can crank out so much stuff so fast. Um, and if you are a hack with a good work ethic, you can crank out a manuscript very fast. You can go through and edit it, punch it up, improve it, polish it, and it's still at the heart derivative,
Hmm.
but it's fresh enough that the average person reading it is going to go, "Oh, that's a great romance. It's a great science fiction novel. It's a great horror story." They're not
Yeah.
looking because they don't want depth necessarily. They just want entertainment. And part of being a creator is you distract them with the shiny object, the entertainment, and then you slip the knife in between the ribs. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, that possibility for innovation, if you're
mhm,
using a redundancy machine, if you're
yeah,
using an AI, you don't get the innovation without that human touch.
yeah. I mean, I do these things on my blog called Fictoids, which are flash fiction. They're 1,000 words or less.
Hmm.
And I used to follow when I was on Twitter. I got kicked off Twitter before it was cool to get kicked off Twitter.
Oh,
Uh,
I just left the place.
um, when I was on Twitter, I was following an account called Magic Realism Bot, which would give a 2 or 3 word surrealistic sentence every couple of hours.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the thing about it is that they were quirky enough that they could be used as story prompts. And
Oh,
I've written
nice.
quite a few of my fictoids that way. I'll get something and I'll read it and I'll think, well, what in the world does that mean? How do you see how would that be if it were a story, turned
Hmm.
into a story? And that usually sparks enough of an idea that I can write, very very short story that expands on this prompt.
Yeah.
Now, I have
Yeah.
no problem with AI used in that way. I have no problem with an artist saying, um, show me, 5 battle scenes done in the style of Jack Kirby. And then
Hmm.
you look
Hmm.
at it and you go, okay, I like what's done here. Now, if I'm going to take my art and I'll do this and that, and you start manipulating it around, but by yourself, you don't have a machine doing it.
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
mind that as a prompt, as something to get the creative mind thinking. But 9 times out of 10, they do it until the AI realizes, oh, you don't want to see the hands and feet. Gotcha. And then oh, I like this, and they put it out there.
Hmm. Right, right.
I mean, I will say this, that there has to be like a 90-to-1 ratio of unusable AI art to the
I'm
stuff
sure.
that you actually see, you know.
Yeah,
And
I'm
every now
sure.
and then it's the unusable stuff is so grotesque they put it out there saying, take a look at this. And you go, well, that's actually more creative than the other stuff.
True enough. True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they like Wes Anderson for some reason. Everything looks like a Wes Anderson movie. Have you noticed that?
This is true. Yeah, yeah. I guess his mark is so indelible
Mm-hmm.
that it's just carried across.
Yeah.
So what has your creative attention at the moment? You were mentioning working for the blog, but curious about the creative avenues you're currently exploring.
Well, I had been writing short stories for quite a while and I've been having success placing them. But I'm getting into the senior ranks, let's put it that way. And I was figuring there's a lot of young writers, new writers who need that exposure. They need to get out there and get their work in front of readers. They need to interact with editors who can help them hone their talents.
Hmm.
And so I figured I don't need the short story market. They need the short story market. So I have withdrawn from writing short stories. If I write one, it'll appear on my blog at some point, but I'm not writing to submit.
Yeah,
What I'm
yeah.
writing in the hopes of people reading, for profit, is I've been writing novels,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I've got like 4 or 5 under my belt now. And the first one just got published not too long ago on uh, Kindle Vella. In fact, I'll send you in the chat if you like. I'll send the link to you
Yeah, please
of
do.
the
I'll make
image.
sure to
But
link to it.
um, the Kindle Vella is an interesting program because it lets you publish work in what do you call it, serialized form, like the way that Dickens did.
Hmm.
And the um, the way it works, I forget which system it's like, but basically you get a certain number of tokens. You get to read the first 3 chapters for free, and then after that you have to pay a certain number of tokens, and the number of tokens depends on the what do you call it, the um, um, length of the chapter.
Oh,
A
okay. Hmm.
400 word chapter will cost less than a 2,000 word chapter, for instance.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
I started there. And once I publish something on Kindle Vella, I will then package it as a ebook and as a print on demand book. But the
Hmm.
nice thing is it'll stay on Kindle Vella. So if you see something and you say, well, I'd like to read, the first 3 chapters at least to get a feel for it, you can always go to Kindle Vella, check out the first 3 for free. And if you like it, then you can buy it. So this will
Nice.
be coming out pretty soon as an ebook and as a print on demand book. I've got 3 more in the hopper to be published over the next year. And I just completed my first draft of my 4th book, and I'm going to be starting my 5th book in January. I set January 1st and July 1st as the start date of all my book length projects, and just try to get them written in 3 months' time, and then let
Wonderful.
them lay fallow for about 6 months before I edit them. You need the chance to forget about what it is you've written. Thank you. There you
Hmm.
go.
Hmm.
Cheeky. Look
Hmm.
for it on Kindle Vella.
That's right. I'll
And
I'll I'll sit in front of this
yeah, yeah,
cheeky man.
yeah. That's by Travis Hanson. Travis has got a hilarious web comic called Life of the Party. If you've got anybody there who likes Dungeons and Dragons,
Hmm.
this is a hilarious Dungeons and Dragons thing. It's really well done, and I have laughed out loud more time, literally laughed out loud more times than I can recall. So give Travis a try. It's Life of the Party, a webcomic.
Wonderful, wonderful. I feel
Yeah.
like these people are now chasing me off to the side of the screen, but I thought I would
Yeah.
promo that way.
Yeah.
So there you go, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So you are a person who has worked in comics,
Hmm.
animation, prose, flash fiction. But what haven't you done that you would want to
Well, I've done
tackle at
video
this point?
games. I've
Video
done
games?
feature films. I've got, including GI Joe. I've got 3 feature films under my belt that I've written.
Yes, yes.
Um, I I never, unfortunately, I never cracked the live action market. I sold one live action teleplay under unusual circumstances. There was a company, and I'm trying to remember their name now. I'm drawing a blank on it, but they did low budget action adventure films, and they
Hmm.
sold a TV series based on the fact they had hours of car chases and crashes and explosions that they could use as stock footage. So I knew one of their production people, and they said, we've got this buddy cop show. Would you be interested in writing one for us? And we're gonna hand you some stock footage and just figure out where to use it in the thing, because we're going to build the episode around the stock footage. So I ended up writing a show about Buffalo Soldiers, even though it was a contemporary cop show. The premise was that one of the cops, the African American cop, had a ancestor who was a Buffalo soldier, and the ancestor had possession of part of a treasure map that led to a lost mine that goes back to the Indian War days.
Hmm. Hmm.
And somebody is now going after the pieces of the map and burglarizing people and terrorizing them to try to get the map. So they liked that, and I said, and the stock footage you gave me of this car with a bunch of luggage on it, well, they have to go to Arizona to investigate, and he takes far more luggage than he needs. So when you have the car chase and all the stuff that's falling off, we just dub in him complaining about he's losing all his luggage, and that's all we need.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
they said, fine, that's good for us. And so they stick this car chase with a car losing luggage. Okay,
It
it
works. If
turned
it
out to be
works,
a
it
pretty
works.
good story, if I say so myself. I mean, we got to talk about the Buffalo Soldiers. um, I had to write it extra cheap. When I first pitched it, they said, well, we can't do a Western. We can't afford horses. And I said, I'll write it where you don't need the horses. The soldiers have lost their horses in a battle. They're on foot.
Mm.
And they're being stalked by the Apache. And you know, you've got hundreds of Apache, 3 guys, but you can cut to them in different places, and you've got
Hmm.
all these
Hmm.
Apaches around them. So they said, "Oh, we like that way of thinking," and there you go.
I love the creative problem solving. Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
I did a science fiction movie that played on the Sci-Fi Channel. You might be able to find it on a streaming channel now. I don't know. It was called Dark Planet,
Hmm.
and the guy that was producing it, nice guy. I mean, he was for a B movie producer, he had that rarest of all talents. He paid you what he promised to pay you, and he paid you on time. And
That is
so
a great
God bless
talent to
him.
have. Yeah.
Paul Ayers, that was his name, Paul Ayers.
Hmm.
And he was not a strikingly original filmmaker, but he could squeeze every ounce out of a budget that he could, every visual trick that he could think of. Um, and
Nice.
he asked me to write a script for him, and I'm trying to think of how do you do this thing. It was 2 groups fighting for control of a spaceship. They're inside the spaceship chasing each other around. And I thought, how in the world do you do this without, breaking the budget? And then I thought, oh, well, the bad guys are in the control room and they can adjust the temperature, they can adjust the gravity, they
Hmm.
can adjust the air. So you have the good guys are, gasping for air or crawling along because the gravity is so intense and things like this. And he loved that. He thought that was great, and he shot it. Um, and then he was doing another movie simultaneously at the same time, and their script ran short. So he just took part of my script and stuck it into that movie. And
Interesting.
okay, fine. I got paid. What am I going to say?
Yeah, yeah. Did you get credit on both is the question.
No, no,
Ah,
of course not.
ah, gotcha,
He
gotcha,
was he
gotcha.
was a really nice guy. I mean, in terms of personality, really nice, trustworthy guy.
Hmm.
And I believe he's passed on by now. But if he had called me again and said, "You want to do another?" I'd have said sure, because you know, for all his sins and shortcomings as a filmmaker, he was ethical. And I'll give him that.
No, no, not a bad way to sum up someone's
No,
professional interaction by all
yeah.
means. Yeah. Well, Buzz, thank you so much for taking the time. Anything else that you want to make sure to share before we close?
Just if you've got anybody listening who wants to be a writer, just apply yourself, keep working. I mean, I started writing with the intent of getting published about age 13. And I appeared and I had stuff popping up in fanzines at that era.
Mhm.
And I lucked out. I was in the right place at the right time. And Arthur Nadell, who was the live action producer at Filmation Studios, was bored and he needed a way to kill an afternoon. So he interviewed me, and I ended up on staff there, and that launched my animation career. So just keep applying yourself. But, the breakthrough will eventually come.
Love it, love it. And as someone who enjoys writing myself, I will take that to heart as well.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you again, sir. Thank you so
You're
much,
welcome. Thank
and glad
you.
to talk anytime.
Mhm.